Very good morning to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. It is Monday, the 14th of March, 2022. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in. My name is Miriam Ogoto, and I'm here to bring you the latest news from Kenya and indeed from Africa. And we catch up with some trending news from across the world. I trust you had a wonderful weekend, and so on the show I'll just get into it and take us through the headlines, and then we shall pick some of the stories as a subject of our discussion today. We start with the Star newspaper. The main headline: vote blocks are shaping Ruto battle. Activities in regions with over 2.5 million votes likely to influence the outcome. You'll find that on page 4 and 5. On the Star, and the main pictorial: Ruto, my 4 years of frustration as Uhuru's deputy. You'll find that on page 6. Drip by drip, Kalecha milk, cooking oil to Ike, a living. That is on page 3. Mumia sugar dashed dreams and court battles. That is on page 8. And of course, today it's all systems go as 831,015 students sit KCSE exam starting today. That is on page 7 on the Star newspaper. On the Standard newspaper, the main headline: Kenyans suffer as Ukraine war hits food prices. Kenyans buys wheat and fertilizer from Russia and Ukraine, and both countries have banned exports, meaning cost of bread and farm inputs will rise, and shilling has weakened against US dollar, so cost of national debt has gone all the way up. The story is on page 4. Ruto criticizes Uhuru, revives ICC case ghost. That is on page 12. Over 830,000 candidates start KCSE. That is on page 13 and 14. And Boda riders want bikes back. That is on page 25. Kalonzo hits out at Railas and Gilu for Azimio standoff. That is on page 6 on the Standard newspaper. On the Daily Nation, it is Uhuru versus Ruto in the fight for his own succession. President Kenyatta is in the crosshairs of his deputy, who less than 24 hours after the launch of a grand Azimio coalition fired a tirade against his boss yesterday, accusing him of calling him a thief and betraying him at his greatest hour of need. Ruto is angry, and so is the president. The story is on page 4. Kalonzo: Ngilo tried to derail my coalition talks with Railas and Kenyatta. That is on page 5. Okay, so now we see the political, the political wars in the Kambani now perhaps will start playing out in Azimio coalition. From what now Kalonzo is saying, we shall look at that story and get to know what really, Kalonzo is saying, the Wiper leader. Malala: why Mudavadi must be Ruto's deputy. That is on page 6. And Kenyans who just won't ditch their masks. That is on page 12. And in education, as KCSE starts, leaking worries dog Magoha. That is on the back page on the Daily Nation. And we are joined right now by Daniel Wesonga. But before I bring in Daniel Wesonga, perhaps I just take us through quickly some of the headlines from across the continent. We start with the Punch newspaper from Nigeria. The main headline: Boni may head APC convention as uncertainty surrounds zoning, and President asked Yobe governor to lead party to national summit. That is according to a source. And Osibanjo to meet state chairman ahead of presidential bid declaration. That is there. In case you don't know, Nigeria is readying itself to its general election next year, so they've started aligning there. On the Guardian newspaper, still from Nigeria, after months of relief, soaring energy prices raise inflation fears. All right, and a news day from Zimbabwe: blame police for blocking Chamisa rallies. That is according to Chiwega. Big Three push politics of peace. That's still on the daily news from Zimbabwe. And the Citizen from Tanzania, government in fresh move to end book crisis. You'll find that. And Tanzania on right track, says Lisu. Okay, I think that's some very good news. And early news still from Tanzania, youths get 20 billion Tanzania shillings boost. And on the Daily Monitor from Uganda, how men and women will share NSSF money. And new vision from Uganda, ghost teachers on payroll exposed. I see this is not just a Kenyan problem. We have ghost workers all over the place. Okay, so that is just in a nutshell what we have in the Kenya newspapers and some of the regional newspapers. Thank you so much. Daniel Lasonga, very good morning to you.
Yes, a very, very good morning to you, Miriam Ogutu, at our headquarters in Nairobi. Good morning to our viewers in Nairobi. Good morning to our viewers in various parts of the country. Good morning to our viewers in East Africa, Africa, and the rest of the globe.
All right. Nice to have you in the show this morning. So all we have is politics. I guess we'll just hit the road running with the politics. And I'd like for us to start with a headline on the Standard newspaper. Ruto to Uhuru. That is on page 12 on the Standard. You have caused us untold suffering. Deputy President Dr. William Ruto yesterday campaigned in President Uhuru Kenyatta's Kiambu backyard. He urged residents to back his presidential bid despite Mr. Kenyatta's preference for Azimio la Umoja candidate Mr. Raila Odinga. Dr. Ruto addressed a rally at Thika Green Stadium, taking a swipe at Mr. Kenyatta over his attack on church leaders during the Sagana 3 meeting last month. He told supporters how he stood with Mr. Kenyatta when they faced ICC charges at The Hague. And I'll just quote what the DP said, as it has been quoted here on the Standard. It is surprising that out of the 8 million Kenyans who voted for us, none of us could be considered to lead us other than the riddle man. That is Mr. Odinga, Jamaa wa Kitendawili, as Ruto fondly likes to referring to the opposition leader in this country. But perhaps what struck me is Daniel, when he said that he stood with President Kenyatta when President Kenyatta was facing ICC charges. And I don't know how you see this, because the last we checked, every one of them, there were 6 Kenyans who were taken to The Hague, and every one of them had a case to answer, and some were acquitted, as we know. And so it's not like Ruto was escorting President Kenyatta to The Hague to stand with him. It's because Ruto also had some charges leveled against him, which, the case is still open, and President Kenyatta also. So they just found themselves dealing with the same challenge, as they said, and that was that. So when Ruto comes out and said, I stood with you during ICC, I mean, how do you, see that, what he's saying?
Thank you so much, Miriam. And let me start, first of all, by expressing my disgust from the act of the Deputy President going to Kiambu, which is a backyard of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and actually talk these negative and imprudent, unprintable words against the president. And, very soon enough, we're going to have this behavior where leaders and outsiders come like trooping to go to Mount Kenya, backyard of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and insult him, being brought to an end. We should actually stop it very, very soon, because, it is lack of respect. It is actually, being quite belligerent to the president, in that the deputy president can lead a battalion of people who are not even from the mountain to go to Mount Kenya region and insult the president with impunity, and nothing is done to them. Very soon, we, the supporters of the president, are going to bring that to the stop. As they insult the president, they should know that the president also has his supporters. He really has people who cherishes whatever work he has done in terms of the legacy and the Big Four agenda, who cherishes the peace and the tranquility that he has been able to bring through the unity of the handshake. And therefore, we shall tell William Ruto that we know he was expecting the country to go into 2022 presidential election while still divided as it were in 2013 and 2017, because he capitalizes on the politics of division, politics of anarchy, and politics of seclusion, where some parts of the country are secluded from the bread basket of the country, from sharing the national cake. and therefore he can always use that to twist people into voting him into government. But now the dynamics have changed, and that is why you see William Ruto crying from every corner of this country. Wherever he goes, he's actually wailing because he's besieged. He has been actually been squeezed, and the dynamics have changed. You know, for a man who has been campaigning from 2013 all the way to this particular juncture in time, you know, he always underestimated his opponents because he was the only one actually singing, drumming up his support, and therefore he thought that he could have it on a silver platter. But woe unto him, his opponents has come on board, and actually he's leading in 6 out of the 8 regions, and therefore he's awestruck and he's scared, and therefore he should not use the panic attack that he has to attack the president and be able to talk negatively about his boss. You just mentioned about the issue of ICC. Absolutely, Miriam. That is what we all understand. That is all we know. Everyone went to ICC. Who went to ICC went there for their own interest. They went there to be able to exonerate themselves. And even when William Ruto was going there, you know, he went there so that he could get off the hook. And that is why the lawyers were being paid by President Uhuru Kenyatta and the other 6 co-accused. And therefore, we know that the president and the rest were actually, their cases were terminated, which means their cases ended permanently at ICC. They have no business to do there in ICC. The evidence was found to be insufficient and therefore could not hold a strong basis to be a nexus in any realm of the law to be able to prosecute President Uhuru Kenyatta and the other 4. But for Joshua Rapsang and William Ruto, we know their cases were vacated, and you know, they could be revived if enough evidence is presented before the court to prove that they interfered with the witnesses and the loss of evidence. And that is what is happening with Lawyer Gisheru. So I really wonder why a man whose case is still vacated, and actually there's a case on his neck which could actually spark his old case and actually be able to open his closet full of skeletons, would say that he actually helped President Uhuru Kenyatta to get out of the Hague. So it's only laughable, Miriam, that William Ruto could claim that. But we know he's a man under siege, and they say that a drowning man will always clutch at a straw. So those are the small straws that William Ruto is trying to clutch on as much as time could allow. But soon enough, he's going to realize that his insolence and the habit of insulting the president won't amount to much other than his humiliating defeat in the August polls. And he'll realize he has spent a lot of billions of shillings which he looted from public coffers. And he will also realize that the case at ICC is actually rejuvenating and coming to reality. The ghosts of ICC are going to haunt him. So let him choose one battle and fight it. He cannot be fighting the president. He cannot be fighting the people of Kenya and stealing from them. He cannot be even insulting elected leaders, whereas he has a bigger case, which is actually the verge of coming back to life at the ICC. So, Miriam, I believe William Ruto should choose his battles wisely. If not so, then his goose will be cooked very soon, and it will be messy, Miriam. I submit.
All right, thank you so much. And perhaps we shall revisit that story at around 11 a.m. But now let's just move on to other matters, but still related to UDA, that is the party led by Deputy President William Ruto. And just below that story on page 12, on the Standard newspaper, a candidate who was disqualified from the United Democratic Alliance UDA presidential race on Saturday says he is likely to appeal the decision. Mr. Jeffnel Nyakwama, who is 29 years old, said it was unfair to disqualify him from the nomination process. Speaking to the Standard on the telephone, the University of Nairobi law graduate said he had requested a waiver on the 1 million nomination fee. Kenya shillings nomination fee. The party set to hold its national delegates conference tomorrow. And Deputy President Dr. William Ruto was cleared to be UDA's presidential candidate as Mr. Nyakwama and Ms. Tracy Wanjiru, who is 23, were disqualified. First of all, even this guy, if this professor, he's a professor, he's a law graduate, and he seems not to understand the law very well, because we know, according to our constitution, you can't run for the presidency seat if you're below 35 years. So he's 29. So that already the constitution disqualifies him. So for him to now want to go to court, I mean, we know this looks a lot like it has been stage managed. When do you think this circus will stop?
Miriam, there's no way it is going. And just like you say, legally, by the virtue of the 2010 constitution, he was not eligible to stand for president. Neither was the lady from the Jomo Kenyatta University of Technology. And I believe it was all about shadow boxing and smoke screens from the UDA, the usual Dennis Itumbi theatrics that are actually meant to signify something, but at the end of the day, they are very shallow and very, very much predictable. So we knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, because you realize in UDA, this is a party where democracy does not even find a home in. Because, in UDA, apart from the party leader, we have never been told that so-and-so is the deputy party leader. Unlike many other parties in Kenya, where, they have a party leader, the deputy party leader, the chairman, vice chair, and all those statutory structures into the party. But in UDA, William Ruto is the boss, is the law, and is the beginning and the end. And therefore, everything that happens within the party has to be dictated by William Ruto. So to me, it was a bit hypocritical and a bit incredulous that we had these two individuals being fronted to battle out with William Ruto for the ticket of UDA. Perhaps it was done intentionally so that the age part will actually exclude them and kick them out of the contest, because maybe perhaps you never know. Sometimes, politics is full of surprises. If they will have brought in someone who is above the age of 35, who constitutionally has a threshold to run for presidency under any particular party, either independent or maybe with a political party, perhaps it will have brought in a new shift. And maybe this person who comes number two demand that they even want to be the running mate of the deputy president. So I believe whoever crafted that smokescreen, whoever crafted that circus, knew that if we get two individuals who are all below 35 years, then technically they're going to be kicked out either by one reason or another, but most certainly by the age factor. So I knew from the beginning that it was a theatric, just meant to paint a smoke screen, which maybe perhaps will preempt that UDA is a democratic party, which we know it is not, Miriam. We've had so many narrations, we've had so many confidential talks where the deputy president has prevailed upon some aspirants to be able to forego their ambitions and support a particular candidate. We've seen that with the Kirinyaga gubernatorial race, where Ongui Ngrishi was told to focus on where parliamentary seat and leave it for Anne Waiguru. We've seen that with even Kiambu. Just yesterday, you saw all the 5 Kiambu gubernatorial aspirants under UDA coming together. And whatever intelligence I got is that the Thika Town Member of Parliament, Wainaina Jango, was prevailed upon by the Deputy President to vie for Thika Township MP seat and leave the others to battle out for the gubernatorial ticket. So that tells you that this is a party where democracy really does not reside. And just to take you a little bit back, when William Ruto was at the Chatham House in the UK, there's this gentleman who asked him, a few years ago you were running under the United Republican Party, URP. Today you are running under the United Democratic Alliance. Are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? So that tells you that if, this is even a party which does not believe in any tangible ideals, and therefore democracy to William Ruto and UDA is a matter of mirage and something which cannot actually really happen. So to me, Miriam, that remains a smoke screen, and so that was for Kenyans and even for the aspirants themselves who presented themselves to battle it out with William Ruto. They knew it was not going anywhere. It was just a storm inside a teacup, and it couldn't have amounted to much more than whatever primary mission it was intended to, just creating an impression. And therefore, that is why I believe even this case, perhaps, or maybe his lamentations would do much good to him, rather than maybe just giving him the undue limelight that maybe he might desire to cause at this particular moment. But legally, I believe that is like a boat in a desert which cannot move.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. We move on to other matters. Still politics and on the same page, page 12, Malala insists Kenya Kwanza running mate seat in ANC's. Is ANC's, and Deputy President Dr. William Ruto is under pressure to name ANC leader Mr. Musalia Mudavadi as his running mate. The stakes for the position remain high, with close allies of DP Ruto from Mount Kenya insisting that the seat ought to be reserved for someone from their region. The names of Mathira MP Mr. Rigathi Gachagua and Kirinyaga Governor Ms. Anne Waiguru have been touted as the possible running mates, but it appears that ANC is determined to push Dr. Ruto to have Mr. Mudavadi, whom they consider to be more experienced. Kakamega Senator Mr. Cleophas Malala, a close confidant of Mr. Mudavadi, threw the spanner in the works by insisting that ANC boss was more suitable person to get the running mate position. Addressing ANC supporters at Shibaga in Kakamega County on Saturday, Mr. Malala said Mr. Mudavadi was the most experienced political technocrat in the alliance to deputize Dr. Ruto. He said ANC ceded ground by agreeing to back DP Ruto's presidential bid, and UDA has produced the presidential flag bearer. Therefore, ANC must be allowed to produce the running mate. Arguments that the position must be occupied by someone from Central doesn't hold water. Is it a wonder that, Senator Malala is finding it appropriate to have such conversations, in public arenas? Don't you think this is conversations they should be having in the meetings that they do have between their coalition partners? Or why do you think Malala finds it important to come out and talk about these things in public arena, and what perhaps is the message that he's trying to send, and what should we expect in the future based on this?
Thank you so much, Miriam. And of course, when we talk about coalition formations, whatever symbolism that comes into mind is a marriage, And even in the African culture, or maybe even the Kenyan culture, before you are able to get married and be husband and wife, or maybe spouses, some things have to go through official channels, and you have to go see the girls, or maybe the bridegroom's parents, so that the two families can come together in a consensus and be able to know what role is this maybe party going to play, and what roles are the other party going to play. And that is why perhaps you saw even One Kenya Alliance insisting on structured talks when it comes to coalition formations. So just like marriage, it is only after everyone has a defined role in that particular union. And of course, everything is now official, either by the virtue that you visited a partner's home and being known to the in-laws, that now everything is given a green light and declared to be valid. And in a more modern way, not until you sign a marriage certificate, then will you be duly be perceived to be espoused to anybody, and that is by law. So the same thing happens with the coalition. So before you get into any coalition formation, you should actually should have initiated talks about whatever stake that you're going to be having in the coalition, and actually to just cement that you have put maybe a signature, or you put pen to paper to make sure that everything that comes out of it is actually guaranteed. So it's actually foolhardy to imagine that Cleophas Malala will be winning and shouting in the podiums or village barazas about the coalition, or maybe which stake Mudavadi should have in UDA or Kenya Kwanza formation. Whereas we actually, unlike 2017 and 2013, we have a law this time round, Miriam, which guides and guarantees coalition partners that they can put everything into ink and be able to have a tangible, solid coalition agreement that will guarantee which stakes and position each coalition player takes. You can understand the kind of pain we actually went through as a handshake team to be able to pass these laws so that they protect the interest of our coalition partners. But it seems our arch rivals in the Kenya Kwanza coalition are actually ignorant about the law as they are about even their own interests, because this law was there to surface and to serve the interest of every political players, so that we do not have a scenario where people are complaining perennially after every election year of being shortchanged by their coalition partners. And therefore, that is the law that ANC would have explored, first of all, in their engagement with the UDA. They would have, first of all, negotiated for a position from Musalia, and whatever share they will get into the maybe the non-existent government, or maybe the government they are hoping they will form, which they will not form anyway, but that would have formed the structure and the basis of their engagement, so that they have it quite clear that we are going to UDA to form a coalition agreement with UDA and other parties. And in this agreement, Musalia Mudavadi is going to be the running mate to the presidential candidate of the coalition. Okay. And of course, we're going to have maybe, let's say, so and so being nominated as ministers, maybe, let's say, 3 slots or 5 slots. We're also going to negotiate for these gubernatorial maybe posts, because we have the majority there. And that will have made everything easier. And that is what President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, who are in the Azimio team, had anticipated, because that is why they were proposing these laws in terms of the Political Parties Amendment Bill of 2021. And therefore, it will have given this process a very, very firm foundation. And I believe it's just maybe sheer foolishness, or maybe out of maybe ignorance, that Musalia Mudavadi jumped ship into UDA or Kenya Kwanza without having talks with William Ruto. Miriam, you don't go to a hotel and just start eating food without seeing whatever is on the menu, without knowing the price of whatever you are eating. A very, very astute person will want to know, first of all, how much cost does it come with? And do I have enough money to be able to continue with this process? So I think this is what they were supposed to do from the onset, from the very go. They were supposed, first of all, to negotiate and know what the stake was. And once they agree with it and they feel that this is equal to actually our strength and our clout, or whatever maybe jurisdiction we control, okay, then they will go forward to sign an MOU. And we do have a video, yes, of what Malala was saying yesterday. So let's just take a look and wrap up that subject.
This time round, we are giving a demand that this is a coalition of parties. This is not a coalition of regions. Watu wasikae mahali pamoja waseme ati kwa sababu hao wamekaa kwa mlima au wanatosha kukua naibu wa rais kuliko sisi ambao tumekaa hapa chini. Sisi kama chama tunasema UDA ikichukua kiti cha president, ANC tunataka kiti cha deputy president. Ama mimi naongea vibaya? Na sisi kama Kenya Kwanza, our agenda is economic revival, ya kwamba tunataka tuinue uchumi, na tunataka tujue ni nani anaweza saidia kufanya kazi ya kuinua uchumi. Leo tumeona Deputy President William Ruto, kabla apewe tikiti ya kuwania urais kwa UDA, ameenda akafanyiwa interview, wakasema yeye anatosha kuwa rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Pia tunataka when they will be selecting the deputy president of Kenya Kwanza, mpaka tuweke hao watu kwa ratili, tujue ni nani ako na uzoefu. Tuweke hapo Musalia Mudavadi afanyiwe interview, tuweke hapo huyo Rigade afanyiwe interview, alafu tuone kati ya Rigade na Musalia ni nani anaelewa masuala ya uchumi kuliko mtu mwingine. Ni nani anaelewa? Ni nani anaelewa? Sisi tunasema Musalia Mudavadi alianza kukua Minister of Supplies and Marketing, akakuwa Minister of Finance, akakuwa Minister of Local Government, akakuwa Vice President, akakuwa Deputy Prime Minister. Tungependa mtuambie yule ambaye mnadhania anaweza shinda Musalia kwa kukuwa Deputy President amekuwa nini? Sio? Ni lazima tuambiwe. And we want to say, as ANC, and I want to repeat, as ANC, our irreducible minimum is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Because we have already ceded ground, we are supporting William Samoei Ruto for president. That is uncontestable. Lakini kiti ya deputy president, nyinyi watu wa Shivanga, hiyo tusiachilie bana. Hiyo mtaachilia kweli?
Very well. That is the senator for Kakamega, Cleophas Malala, making the case there for his party leader, Musalia Mudavadi of ANC, and just trying to spell out some of the achievements and some of the positions that perhaps Mudavadi has held and some of the things he's been able to achieve throughout his political life. And so that, as of Malala, qualifies Mudavadi to be the next president, compared to, because he brought in the name of Rigathi Gachagua, compared to Gachagua, Musalia Mudavadi stands a better chance to be the deputy president of the public and in Kenya Kwanza Alliance. And he started by saying that this time around we are giving demands. So, Cleophas Malala here is making demands, and he's making them very loud and clear and in public. And as you've said there, and we even talked about this yesterday, these are things you discuss. You discuss, you don't come out. And this is the same behavior that, has broken off some of the coalitions we've had before. When members cannot be disciplined enough and ensure that some of these conversations are held, within the presence of privacy before they come out and make, some of these remarks that they know will stir, some conversations among the public. But this was intentional, Daniel. What do you think is the message that Malala is trying to send out here? Or ANC party?
Sorry, you cut me off, but whatever I wanted to say is that, these are the things that they ought to have said from the start, and not maybe just rush out of anger and disgruntlement to go support a UDA presidential candidate without even maybe putting their interests ahead of them. So I think, Miriam, these are people who are confused, and we should not even give them airtime maybe to listen to them. And one thing I know, the turncoat he is, Malala and even Musalia Mudavadi, they might even bolt out of UDA and try to go it alone. But as much as I know, from the information I have, Musalia Mudavadi actually joined forces with William Ruto because he did not have enough money to be able to run for presidency. And that is why even after they joined hand with William Ruto, they had to rush to the US to collect the George Soros money through the Open Society Foundation and collect some few $1 million through the churches and other NGO organizations in the US and in the UK. So I believe, Miriam, Malala is living in a world overtaken by events. As far as I'm concerned right now, like the Swahili say, washa tolea maji nguo, so imebaki tu waoge sasa kwa sababu huo ni uamuzi ambao wenyewe walifanya na walifanya kwa kujua. So I don't think there is anything that can defend the move they took and what they are talking about today. They say ignorance has no defense. If they chose to be ignorant in doing their dealings with the Kenya Kwanza coalition, then they should not involve Kenyans in their disgruntlement. And therefore, I find Malala's tantrums in the public domain quite unuseful and quite useless in this particular regard, Miriam. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much. And it appears the presidential age limit for anybody wishing to run for a presidency in this country was revised in the 2010 Constitution. It used to be 35 minimum. Now I think it's 18. So we made a mistake there earlier. So that is according to the new Constitution. As long as you're 18 years plus, you are free to run for elections in this country. So we apologize for that miscommunication earlier while we were having that conversation about those two that were disqualified in the running through the UDA ticket. All right, so there's a story on page 6 on the Standard newspaper. And Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka yesterday gave a glimpse into the intrigues leading up to his endorsement of ODM leader Raila Odinga as Azimio One Kenya coalition presidential aspirant. Addressing a crowd at his hometown of Sekuru during a crowd-breaking ceremony for a chapel at a technical training institute, Kalonzo regretted that some leaders around Mr. Odinga were opposed to him and other One Kenya Alliance principals signing a political pact with the ODM leader. The Wiper leader said the delay to sign the coalition agreement on Saturday morning, as earlier anticipated, was caused by Odinga's refusal to adopt One Kenya Alliance. As part of Azimio coalition, Kalonzo particularly took issue with Kitui Governor Charity Ngilu, whom he claimed had stood in the way, and incited the ODM leader not to sign the Azimio One Kenya Alliance agreement. Okay, so I was watching that news yesterday, and it's a bit nervous. One, Kalonzo seems to want to, I don't know, would you say over-explain himself? And I know he has a right, because maybe a lot of his supporters were disappointed that he's now supporting somebody else, and he's not the one running as a presidential candidate on the One Kenya Alliance coalition. And so maybe that's why he has to keep explaining himself as to why he chose to endorse Raila. But also now we see this competition that has existed in Ukambani as to who is the supreme leader in the Ukambani, and we've seen that play out, especially between Kalonzo and Ngilu. And Ngilu has dissed that, because Kalonzo seems to want to take that mantle as the supremo Kamba leader, but a lot of times, Ngilu has been very dismissive. So we see that competition. We see that perhaps now coming to play in Azimio La Umoja. How do you think this will work out in terms of, bringing in the votes from the Ukambani region? These supremacy battles.
I deem these supremacy battles as here maybe sibling rivalry between Charity Ngilu, Kalonzo Musyoka, and the other two Ukambani governors. But nonetheless, it is a bit petty to be enrolled in such kind of push and pull, whereas you have a bigger role of making sure that you deliver votes that will make your candidate the fifth president of the Republic of Kenya. So what I will really maybe call on them, they are both noble leaders. Kalonzo Musyoka is a great diplomat. Charity Ngilu is a great leader and a great champion of women empowerment. And in the books of history of Kenya, Charity Ngilu has actually a special place, having even run for the presidency of this country. She's someone with a very, very high political intuition. Remember, Charity Ngilu has never been on the losing side whenever he goes to align herself with a presidential ticket. So I believe these are all equal leaders, all in their capacities, and there's a way you can actually be powerful and maybe be influential without necessarily trying to bring the other leader down. So to me, I think this is not time for blame games. This is not time for finger pointing. This is not time for maybe talking ill about one another, but rather they should be able to focus on the bigger goal and know that they are working all for the good of their team. And as a team, there is no lesser of a player or maybe a great of a player. The goalkeeper is as important as the striker, and the striker is as important as the middle player. And that is how it is. That is how great teams win, by appreciating the effort each and every one of the players put into the game to be able to oversee the victory of the entire team. So I believe these kind of disagreements and acrimony should not show up at this particular time. This is not a good time for the Ukambani leaders to be able to take on one another. And if it were to be so, then I will tell them that actually the only thing that was making them to disagree perhaps has been set aside. And that is why we have Kalonzo Musyoka in Azimio La Umoja. And therefore, we should not be having the reverberations or maybe the remnants of the previous acrimony spilling back forth into today's maybe arrangement. So let them know, each one of them, their roles they are playing in Azimio. And the only talk should actually be, the only competition should actually be who will campaign more and bring even more votes to Azimio, rather than competing with the other person to see who is the kingpin and who is not. You know, that will only wreck the ship from the within. and there is no there's no such kind of maybe team that goes to play while maybe they are fighting among themselves and expect a win. Just to quote what Abraham Lincoln once said when addressing the State of the Union, when the American Union was actually the Union was actually at the verge of collapse, he told them that a house divided upon itself cannot stand. And Miriam, that is how it's supposed to be. You first have to put your house in order and support the bigger goal before you go out there to battle it out with other competitors. Maybe also just to quote the greatest war strategist of all times from China, that is Sun Tzu. He said that victorious warriors first win the battle before going to fight. And you cannot win a battle whereas you are fighting amongst themselves, yourselves. And it means that you just have to put an environment where your morale is boosted and you actually have a teamwork mentality and you have positivity amongst yourselves before you go and fight. So to me, I believe if it continues that way, it's going to actually have a big implication on the Azimio team in Ukambani. So let them quell the disquiet, let them actually work on the acrimony and gloriously and respectively as they are as leaders, be able to put aside their differences and focus on the goal of propelling Raila Odinga to become the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya. Miriam, I submit.
All right, thank you. And we move on to other matters. And that is on page 12 now on the Daily Nation. Lifting of mask rules splits public opinion. When the masking mandate was lifted on Friday by Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, it felt like a relief to most Kenyans. This time 2 years ago, containment measures were imposed by the government which criminalized walking around in public without a face mask. As unpredictable as COVID-19 was, its pattern continues to bring even more confusion as it is now. The country has been recording the lowest positivity rate since the onset of the pandemic for more than a month now. This is after the Omicron variant, which recorded fewer hospitalizations but spread faster than all the variants that came before it became dominant globally. Even so, the number of positive cases have been plummeting, and so has the adherence of most of the containment measures. While announcing the updated measures, Mr. Kagwe left the masking option open. Whoever wants to keep wearing them is free to do so, and those who don't can breathe easy. And I've seen since Friday, I was a bit excited about it, but then again, I just don't have the courage to walk around in public, in mask. It will take me a while, or maybe because I'm stocked, some masks, I need to clear them up. But even coming to work this morning, Daniel, I noted a lot of Kenyans still having their masks on. Why do you think this is the case?
Miriam, personally, I think I'll keep on wearing the masks because in as much as the infection rates have gone low and there's the vaccine, and also Kenyans have known that perhaps if you do not have underlying health complications and you are vaccinated, the disease will be a bit mild. Nonetheless, you wouldn't want to take chances because apart from COVID, also you just understand that sometimes you might be in places where we have a lot of dust and maybe impurities in the air. And what this particular maybe pandemic has taught us is that you can actually put on a mask and be able to save your lungs from a lot of things in terms of impurities, in terms of infections. You realize that actually infections such as flu went down quite so much, apart from a few instances where maybe we had a cold season in Nairobi and there was some kind of flu. Perhaps also that was a variant of COVID, you never know. But what I know, it has actually gotten away some of the illnesses that we used to experience, illnesses such as dysentery, illnesses such as diarrhea, and all that hygiene-related illnesses were actually wiped out. So I believe it will be from a personal choice to just keep on staying safe because in as much as the infections have gone down, like I said, we are yet not out of the woods. We haven't seen each and every country reporting maybe 0 cases of COVID. So it is still here with us. You can still get infected. In fact, today I was reading the news in the morning that the former U.S. President Barack Obama had tested positive for COVID despite being fully vaccinated. So this disease is still there. In as much as the government has said that it is not mandatory to put on masks in public places, but it does not mean that as you as an individual, you shouldn't be responsible enough also to just know that this thing is not quite away from us, and you could actually contract it regardless of the fact that you are vaccinated or not. So, Miriam, I think that only comes out of personal caution. I would say so.
Okay, thank you so much. And at this point, we know today about 831,015 candidates are starting their KCSE exams. And it's all systems go for the 2021 KCSE candidates as they start the exams today. Form 4 students will start with English paper 1 and chemistry paper 1 in the morning, followed by mathematics paper 1 and English comprehension. And I think, the candidates from last year to this year are doing the exams under very tight, conditions that have been brought about by the pandemic. I don't know, what message do you have for the Kenyan candidates who are starting their KCSE exams today? We know the KCP started theirs last week and concluded. So what is your message of perhaps best wishes?
Thank you so much, Miriam. Mine, first of all, will be to congratulate them for their patience and the hard work that they've put in through the 4 years or maybe 12 years of their study. Not everyone who started maybe their nursery school together with them was able to reach to a level where they can be able to say now they are candidates and are sitting for a national exam. Many were able to drop out. Many were maybe met with maybe unfortunate circumstances that forced them out. But for them, God has been quite graceful to them. And of course, they are candidates. And if they can only unleash all their potentials and be able to write whatever they've been learning throughout this period of time, then a brighter future lies ahead of them. So mine will be to wish them a very, very successful period during this exam, and to wish them that God grants them wisdom, remembrance, and also good conscience to be able to undertake the exam without anxiety and maybe ill thought that might otherwise deteriorate or maybe dampen their performance. So that will be my wish to them, that they all achieve the success they've been able to work for, and at the end of the day, they progress to the next maybe stage of their academic life. And maybe just to mention, the president has actually provided more learning institutions, tertiary learning institutions, in the name of adding more universities to the existing ones, also opening the TTIs and other vocational training institutes. So they are free to go after the exams. They are free to go out there and explore and be able to broaden their knowledge and their skills. Nelson Mandela once said that the only key to success and a good life is actually through education. So I believe this will be a doorway for them to be able to get a good life for themselves and be able to grow and improve and build their country, of course, out of patriotism. So, right. Miriam, I don't have much for them other than to wish them a very, very successful period during this time.
All right. And we do wish our candidates, our children who are sitting the exams starting today, KCSE, all the best in their exams as they start them today. Now let's just shift focus to some news from across the continent, and we start with South Africa. And police in South Africa are on alert in case of renewed clashes between residents of Johannesburg's Alexandra Township and foreign street vendors. Alexandra is one of the poorest areas of the country, but from its shacks, residents can easily see the towering skyscrapers of Sandton, one of the richest commercial districts on the whole continent, just a few kilometers away. As a result, people from across South Africa and neighboring countries flock to the township to use it as a base to earn a living. Two controversial groups, the Alexander Dudula movement and Operation Dudula, which are campaigning against undocumented foreign nationals, have emerged recently, and support seems to be growing among South African communities who feel marginalized. There are concerns that their campaigns could lead to yet another outbreak of xenophobia violence in the country. And then we move on to Zambia, and Ruto Banda, who was Zambia's president from 2008 and 2011, has died at the age of 85 after suffering from colon cancer. Mr. Banda, a former diplomat, was serving as vice president when in 2008, President Levi Mwanawasa suffered a stroke and later died. He then took office, becoming the country's fourth president, and won the subsequent election, but he stepped down in 2011 after losing that year's poll to Michael Sata. And Mr. Banda was widely praised at the time for accepting defeat rather than challenging the results. His time in office was dogged by corruption allegations, and in 2013 he was arrested after being accused of stealing millions of dollars. He denied the accusations, describing them as being part of a witch hunt, and was never convicted. And then we move over to Ethiopia, and the Ethiopian government says it will take action against people seen in a video burning a man alive. A film of men in Ethiopian army uniforms taunting the man and setting him on fire has been circulated widely on social media. The authorities say the incident took place in the northern region of Benshangul Gumuz, where there is frequent ethnic violence. The video has not been verified independently. It is not clear if the incident is connected with the war in northern Ethiopia, which started 16 months ago. And then we conclude with Egypt. And the country has this last week executed 7 people convicted of carrying out Islamist attacks, human rights groups say. 3 of them were found guilty of taking part in an attack at Helwan in the suburbs of Cairo in 2016, which killed 8 policemen. The other 4 were convicted of killing police officers in early attacks. Egypt has handed down hundreds of death sentences in recent years. Human rights organizations say that not only Islamists, but a range of opponents of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi have been targeted. So that is the latest from the continent. And of course, later on, I shall bring you more news as we continue to receive them, and we should have a talk about that. I don't know, because we still have like 5 minutes remaining. Wesonga, is there a story that you've picked up there? Perhaps that stood out for me is this one from Egypt, and how Egypt now is deciding that anybody who has been found to be operating in these extremist groups, the penalty is you'll be executed, period. I wonder if that is what we should do with these extremists we see across Africa, if maybe that will stop or decrease or something, because a lot of times we put, the human rights front and center, which, it's embedded in our constitution. So we say, even if you're found guilty, then the legal way, the constitution has to be followed to the latter, But Egypt is saying, you know what, we will execute, and it did execute 7 people last week who have been convicted of carrying out Islamist attacks. These are, extremist groups. And also in South Africa, that, some residents in Alexandria Township in Johannesburg, they have formed like organizations to fight against other Africans who are coming there to put up shop, to do these Miaga jobs, and they're forming organizations to oppose that and to intimidate and even to put their lives at risk. And this is felt as though it might revive another episode of the ugly face of xenophobia as we've seen in the recent past. So what has stood out for you?
Thank you so much, Miriam. And let me start with South Africa. And perhaps sometimes we tend to maybe misunderstand the South African people. I believe even you as an individual, if you go through a very traumatic scenario where your properties are unconstitutionally or maybe legally seized away from you, your people are butchered and displaced, your country is actually defiled, and, its people actually tortured by an outsider who comes in the name of a colonialist. It really leaves a very traumatic disorder in your mind. And therefore, you realize with the people of South Africa, the apartheid was the worst regime that ever happened to this world, other than Hitler's Nazi regime. And these are the people who are under that particular brutal regime for so many years. You realize that South Africa was among the last African countries to gain their independence. And this apartheid regime had been there for decades, so to say, Miriam. So South Africans are people who have been through a lot in terms of their own social experiences. And the most unfortunate thing is that even after they got the independence, still a majority of the black South African people are living in abject poverty. They have no employment. They have no access to basic amenities. They have no access to quality education or health care. They have no even an equal, they had no even equal opportunity in employment only until recently. They still, we still have the white former colonialists as the holders of the capital of the economy, and therefore they control almost everything in the country. And therefore that is why the South African people feel disfranchised. And for them, you know, now it is a psychological problem, Miriam, which I believe because they cannot be able to wage a war against the whites who are actually rightfully their tormentors. They choose to attack the weaker, maybe people who are maybe the migrants from the other African countries, you know, through xenophobic attacks. So that is something which is understandable even in psychology. When you read The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, he says that when the weak are actually attacked by the superiors, they actually turn against the other weaker, the weaker person to be able to exonerate themselves and feel a bit superior also, because they feel like by attacking the other people, they're actually paying off whatever has been taken away by the superior tormentor. And that is what even used to happen to Moroccans when Frantz Fanon was writing The Wretched of the Earth. You realize that the French were actually purging the Moroccans and the Algerians rather. And they were actually doing all kinds of brutalities on these people, taking away their lands, denying them basic human rights, fundamentals, and taking away even their dignity. And all they could do as Algerians, they will actually take the rage and attack their fellow Algerians in that regard. So whatever is happening in South Africa is actually psychological, and that is why we need to intervene in South Africa and make sure the people of South Africa, the natives of South Africa are able to get their land back, they're able to get the economy back. The leadership of South Africa should empower more the black South Africans who are the residents and the natives of the land to be able to take up all the leadership positions in government. You realize that the whites have actually a majority. After ANC, the next party that has a majority in parliament is the whites. I think it is called the Conservatives or something of sort. So you realize that the blacks have never experienced real independence. And whatever is happening down is just a trickle-down effect. And to me, I believe it is something that should be addressed. They always say that at least Robert Mugabe left behind land for Zimbabwean. Nelson Mandela only left quotes and, impressive speeches for the people of South Africa. And today, a majority of South Africans are living in ghettos, in more densely populated slums, simply because there was no there was no reparations and there was no compensation for the land, for the years of brutality, and there was no healing process. Okay. So to me, I believe the lack of redemption strategy in South Africa is the cause of all this, Miriam. I submit. Right. Maybe just to on Libya.
No, we're out of time.
All right, Miriam. Let's start to picture then.
Yes, and we will continue with this conversation in the next session. And there's a lot of issues that you've raised, but unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss this further. And the party that, is white minority there is the Democratic Alliance Party in South Africa. So it is dominated by the Afrikaans, all right? But that is a conversation for another time. So we want to thank you so much for your time this morning, for tuning in and for watching us. I thank you, Daniel Wesonga. I thank you, our viewer. But do not go too far, because we shall be right back with some of these conversations and our topic. We shall be looking at what the Deputy President said yesterday. And I know we just touched a bit on it, but we'll come and look at fully his sentiments yesterday and what that perhaps means in his campaigns moving forward. Thank you so much. My name is Miriam Mugutu. Bye-bye for now.